Ümit üzme aziz halqim, ümit üzme ey ana yurt. Biz atlandık bu küreşke, o yıl taştak uyuşup. Allah verse bu nusretni, bizgilerimiz sep bulup. Zalimlarni yığlatgudek, Uyghurs gibi küçlük bulup. Lepildeydi asminanda, göz çaknitip şu günü. Ay yıldızlık gök bayrağım, ey ana makam. Ay yıldızlık gök bayrağım.
Sisters, you've come to another episode of our Happy Uyghur series where we interview the Uyghurs who still have family members who are arbitrarily detained in Chinese concentration camps, and this false pretense that for some reason that the Uyghurs are so happy with China's policies. I have a very special guest with me here today. He is the son of parents who are in Chinese concentration camps, but right now he is fighting for his father to be free. None other than, you've seen the ad. I'd like to welcome everyone to the show, brother Arfat Erkin, aka Alfred. Assalamu alaikum, dear brother. How are you today?
Alaikum assalam. How are you? I'm good.
I'm very good, good. Well, you know this series. Thank you for coming on the show. When you hear the term coming, I want to get to your personal story, but just, you know, in the news, whenever you see the term Happy Uyghurs, Dancing Uyghurs, you know, we are uplifting all these uneducated Uyghurs. And we'll get to your father's story of how false this is, that the Uyghurs are uneducated, and without China, the Uyghurs would be nothing. What do you think about this?
Sure. It is very ironic to see the dancing Uyghurs whenever China release a propaganda video, and just like as if it's Uyghurs are living in some kind of Bollywood movies or La La Land, just like randomly dancing on the street for no reason at all. Like, it is very, I guess, it is very typical colonial narrative to put the indigenous people of the occupied land or the territory to as like some kind of not educated people, and depict them as some kind of barbaric, and so that they can get away, so they can justify what they're doing. But yeah, it is very ironic and it is very hypocritic. It's whenever I see that the term Happy Uyghurs, it's just, and if I'm not mistaken, the Chinese foreign minister said Uyghurs are the world's most happiest Muslims, and that is I don't know how other Muslims feel about it, but yeah, it's very weird and hypocritic. Yeah.
Well, let's get to your story. Both your parents were in these camps. Your mother is out at the moment, but is your father one of these uneducated Uyghurs that the Chinese government or the regime want to re-educate and make him, you know, give him some money and, you know, uplift him?
My father, his name is Erkin Tursun. He is a well-known TV producer and a journalist. He is he graduated from university. Both of my parents are actually had university degree, and both of not just my parents, both of my grandparents on both sides, all of them have a university education, and my father is quite well known in the region for his journalism works. He won many national and regional awards, and even just a few months before his attainment, Chinese government local government actually awarded him as one of best 10 journalism workers. And he also did many TV shows, movies, documentaries. He also did projects for the United Nations about a few, I think, documentaries about some cultural heritage. I think, both of my parents also speak fluent Chinese. Both of them had their own respective career and very successful in what they do. My mom is also a mathematics teacher. and yeah, and both of them speak fluent Chinese, and both of them are, I will say, good educated, but still, they were detained, and it's none of the criteria or the description Chinese government using to describe all those camps. For example, for people to get a job, my parents have a job, and for people to get education or vocational skill to get a job, and to teach Chinese. Most of my parents actually speak quite fluent Chinese, and actually, my mom, since 2009, Chinese government abolished the teaching of the Uyghur language education. So my mom, since 2009, my mom started teaching all her classes in in Mandarin, because the government abolished Uyghur language education, even though it's technically Uyghur autonomous region. But yeah.
That's, I mean, your family doesn't really fit. I mean, both college, university graduates, educated, know the Chinese language, TV producer, quite well known. What do you think the reason is?
I would say the in overall scale, Chinese government has been just arbitrarily detaining people, as long as they are Uyghur. But the criteria or the some merits that adds to is that if you're normally it's if you're religious, or if you, for example, if you pray or if you fast, or if you have very strong cultural identity, or if you have some kind of influence, positive influence in the Uyghur society. The Chinese government actually, as we have seen, they detained a lot of Uyghur scholars. For example, former president of Xinjiang University, honorary doctorate of University of Paris, Dr. Tashbati, was sentenced to death. Former president of Xinjiang Medical University, Khalmarat Gopar, was also sentenced to death. So, and we have like list of hundreds of Uyghur scholars, doctors, and other people who are influential who have positive influence in society. So I think, in regards to my parents' detainment, I believe one of the reasons what I heard is that simply because I'm studied abroad, even though I came to America as an international student, with all the procedures Chinese government itself approved, and yeah, and one of the reasons is that, and I also heard that because of my father as a journalist and as a TV producer, he also I heard that he had like quite positive influence in the Uyghur society, and in Hulja, in my hometown city Hulja, my father was known by like people call him as like one of five like stars, not stars. I wouldn't say star, but something like intellectuals of the city or stars of the city. So. Yeah, it's kind of still up until today, I still don't know why my parents are detained, why still no information about my father even today. But yeah, I
What
guess.
what is the fear? Because you apparently are not getting any news about your father. You only found out about your mother through Chinese propaganda saying, it's not true. I've never been in a camp, and what you're saying is all lies. What's the fear that, with your father, and why was your mother let go and not your father?
Um, I don't know, but one of the reasons is that I guess my mom actually was detained before my father. She was detained back in at the end of 2017, and I heard that she was sent to concentration camp. She detained in concentration camp for about a year, and in early 2018 she was released. In early 2019, actually, after being detained for over a year, she was released under critical health conditions, and she was immediately hospitalized and
Hmm.
went through major surgeries. And yeah, and it also actually it actually quite meet the same similar to the timeline when Chinese government said the invited foreign journalists to the region, and said, "Oh, now we have released all the Uyghurs." And at that time, they did release some of the Uyghurs, as you might know, uh, in the early 2019 from the concentration camps. And so I think my mom's health conditions were so bad that she was immediately hospitalized after after being released, and she went through major big surgeries. She was in such a bad condition, so I guess that's one of the reasons my mom was released. And but my father, in terms of my father's case, my father was detained first on March 2018, and what I heard that he was directly sent to prison. He was first in camp or a detention center, and then he was directly sent to prison with random sentences. Throughout the last 2 years, I heard very different, multiple claims about how like different prison sentences about my father, and even Chinese government actually. The for about a year, Chinese government never responded to my father's case. Like I spoke to every single media outlets out there. I wrote emails to Chinese embassy, all the like CNN, Fox, NBC, whether it's right wing, left wing, whatever we call it. All of them like asked Chinese government about requested information about my father, but they never responded. Even when they even when they responded to CNN News about Mikhail Tursun, the former camp detainee, actually in that same news article, there was the story of two person, me and the Mikhail the former camp detainee.
Mm-hmm.
But Chinese government, Chinese foreign, for what do we call it? Chinese foreign
Foreign minister or foreign
minister.
spokesperson?
Yeah, a spokesperson actually responded to that same news article, but they only like said, "Oh, Mikhail Tursun is lying," blah 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 blah, but they didn't mention anything about my story in that same news article. So I was very anxious because I couldn't get any information about my parents. But last year, November, Chinese government for the first time actually responded to my parents, my claims about my parents. After U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo mentioned my name in his statement among Uyghurs whose family being detained or harassed. And in that statement, they said my mom was never detained, and they made a whole conversation between me and my mom, saying like even today still don't have any contact with my mom. Like my last contact with my parents were back in early 2017 on WeChat, but they said my mom supposedly having still conversation with me and told me, "Don't be a terrorist or don't learn from your father," or things like that. And they said my father was detained for violence and terrorism. That's what they said on their statement. But 2 weeks later, I received email from United Nations Working Group on Enforced or Involuntary Disappearance. They said that Chinese government responded to their request for information about my father back in September, a few months before Chinese government made a public response about my claims. And in their response to United Nations, they gave completely different reason, and has nothing to do with like violence or terrorism. It's like, so it is very, even today I still don't know like where he is, how he is, or where, like if he is in which prison he is, or even like if he's being actually sentenced, like what is the official charge. Like I mean we know that they are just randomly giving sentences to the Uyghurs in the camps to legalize their detainment, but yeah, still I don't know why they're not giving any information or anything like that. But I guess my father was more influential than my mother in a term, because my mother was a mathematics teacher at elementary school, but my father was he also opened up schools, he did documentaries, he was a quite well-known journalist, so he had quite influence in the society. So I guess that's one of the reasons, that might be one of the reasons they didn't release him.
As we're talking about the Happy Uyghurs, the Chinese propaganda, you mentioned just before you met with Secretary Pompeo. What do you? I mean, when you hear things like the US is using the Uyghurs, it's not true. It's all US propaganda. China, America is just jealous. How do you respond? I mean, I'm sure you've gotten, and I'm sure you've had people comment on that photo when you met with Secretary Pompeo. How do you respond or react to those sort of comments?
Actually, I don't think U.S. government is doing enough for the situation. That it's considering the severity of the situation, considering legal boundaries, Chinese government and United States government in the system like United Nations and all other treaties to prevent genocide and any other tragedies, mass-scale tragedies. U.S. government is a large United. For example, a lot of people said, "Oh, U.S. government is using Uyghurs." So, give me example of Chinese U.S. government using Uyghurs. Up until 2000, like there was no single bill about the Uyghurs nor the region up until like last year, I think. There was no single bill passed in U.S. state, U.S. Congress up until last year. So it is really, or maybe this year. I forgot the timeline, but yeah, all the mass detainment, everything started back in 2017, back in 2016, and even before that, there was unprecedented level of oppression, unlike not in the same level as today, but even before there was a lot of things were going on in the region. But I think this government is just merely doing its responsibility as one of the most powerful nation in the world, also as a country that has like signed all those papers, all those treaties, all those conventions to prevent such tragedies in the human society. And it is also whenever I see comments saying that, oh, it is CIA plot, oh, it's something like that, all those some people, I don't know, like if he calls them like tanky or something like that, but I think it really frustrates me because actually it angers me more than the Chinese government, because of, I understand even though what they're doing, Chinese government is very inhumane. It is utterly it's utterly what do we call it, disgusting, but it is not something new in human history. We have seen that like multiple times. Whenever there is a occupation, whenever there is someone trying to assimilate the local population, that's what they do. Like even this things have been repeating for years. It's Uyghurs versus Chinese. That it's not something like something new. Like the even in our history, but all those people, those tankies who have nothing to do with Uyghurs, all those people, they're simply just like the denying our tragedy, or denying our very existence, denying the attainment of my parents and all the millions, the pain of millions of Uyghurs, simply because they think communism is better than capitalism, or simply think because a country that doesn't even have a separation of powers, that doesn't have independent judiciaries, a country that doesn't have any election, a country that doesn't even have a free press, over relatively free countries in the West. So I think it is very tragic. And I came to America as an international student without like any, American dream, or like having any plan to stay here. I am now like only speaking out. I wouldn't say only speaking out, but I'm here today because my parents detained, and if I never had any plan to stay in America or like left here in America. I just wanted to get a good education and get back to my homeland. But now I had to drop out from the school like 2 years ago because detained with my parents. I had to start everything from the ground, and now I'm finally get on a little bit ground, and while working full time, also doing my university. But still, I'm while I'm like working full time, doing my university and I'm also studying full time, having no time to like do any of other things. All those people are commenting, saying, denying the very existence of our tragedy, denying our pain. So it's just frustrates me. But I think they are just even if they follow communism, I think even in communism or the Marxist ideology, there's very clear indications of like being against oppression or being against colonialism or things like that. So I will suggest, if there is a tanky or someone who do think communism is better than capitalism or something like that, please follow communism, the ideology itself, not Chinese government. Don't become a tool of a foreign state. Don't become some stupid who deny the very pain of the millions of people.
Uh, I mean, we're always wanting to live with hope, and we always want to live with hope. And do you see hope? Like, what do you look for the future? Obviously, we hope that this will not continue for too long. As you mentioned, your intention to go to the United States was simply to study and then go back home. What's the future for you?
Well, at least for at least for a foreseeable future, I don't think I can go back. I mean, they even, just because I spoke to the media about the detainment of my parents, they called me like member of terrorist group or things like that. It's very idiotic, but I don't think I can go back in a foreseeable future, at least until there is some kind of regime change or something like that in China. But hopefully, we are seeing a lot of more and more international support about on our situation, and a lot more people are standing up against the Chinese government in what it's doing in Uyghur Autonomous Region. But I think there's still hope, even so it's very tiny. But I hope, inshallah, things will get better. And yeah, I can't really predict the future, or I don't know much about politics. So, but
When you see, sort of last few questions, when you see, for example, the recent French boycott of products, I personally believe, okay, let's do it. That they disrespected Islam. That's my opinion. But we have a genocide happening, right, to the Uyghurs, but we don't get that same response from so-called Muslim leaders or Muslims in general. And I think a lot of people don't actually understand what the religion of Islam teaches. I mean, how do you feel when you see that?
so it is very ironic, and it is very, in my personal opinion, very hypocritic reaction that we have seen. I mean, we have seen this before. Like a lot of Uyghurs experiences, a lot of Uyghurs experiences have seen this, how this hypocritic, this response from the people, and not just from the Muslims, but especially from the Muslim communities around the world, because for example, just speaking from my own experience, in my 18 years of life, I left the region when I was 18. So in my 18 years of life in the region, every year in school, I had to sign that me and my parents would not fast or do things like that. Every week we had political education, like in a very aggressive sense, in a way you can say insulting Islam or the Prophet Muhammad. But all those, I had never seen all those responses. I had never seen any like one bit, like like one tiny bit of the response, the reaction from the people, that like how they are responding to the France's policy, or I don't know policy, but maybe I think the French president's remarks. But yeah, so I think it is very hypocritical. And just yesterday I saw that Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said that, oh, like we are boycotting French products, blah blah blah. And the Imran Khan, the Pakistan Prime Minister, said, oh, like even wrote an email to the what's it?
Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, wrote email to combat like Islamophobia or things like that. Like what? Like Quran's being burned like multiple times, thousands of times. There are even Uyghurs, like even for example, the last camp detainee, she married to a Pakistani, and she was even Pakistani embassy involved in her release in a way. They know everything, but what was the response? They were one of those countries that signed in support of burning Qurans, the insulting Prophet Muhammad, and all the things genocide against Uyghurs. The largest, I would say, largest forced, what do we call it? Trying to convert Muslims to the atheists in last 100 years. I guess maybe that is, yeah. So it is very hypocritical, I would say, this response, not just from the Muslim leaders, but just from the general public, because yeah, I guess it's kind of like bully psychology. I will say it's kind of bully psychology, where you don't say anything to the bully, but you just do the, like, for example, you can, like, you do all those things to the last bully ones, like France, I guess, in America. Even so, we can argue that, oh, this policy is wrong, or we are against this for any country, but regardless, I think it's very hypocritic, and it's also this is also can be a lesson to the Muslims around the world, that we need to be just to our sense of justice, and we need to be just. We need to face our own reality, face the world. Don't be like dragged by our emotion, blah 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 blah. But instead, just to do. I'm not saying that you shouldn't respond to if someone says, in America or in France or whatever country, if someone says something you think that is wrong, or if someone do something that you think it's wrong, you should respond to that. I mean, you can say, or you can do like different activities. I mean, I'm not saying like you should like to kill someone or do like terrorist activities, but I'm saying that you have like legal ways of responding to any different remarks, or different whatever we call it. But still, if you do that, but at least do that to everyone, or and yeah. Sorry, I got a little bit off topic.
No, that's fine. That's fine. One of the slowly coming to the end of this interview, you know that the elections are coming up. As far as I know, you're not a US citizen, but you live in the United States, and a lot of the policies still do affect you. We've seen that this Trump administration has been one of the most supportive in the history of US administrations. I'm wondering if you've read this article. If not, that's okay. But when, this coming election, who do you think would be better overall, for the Uyghurs?
To be honest, I haven't read that article, and I'm not a political analyst or a political activist. But in my, I don't, I, they just, in my opinion, in my personal opinion, the Trump administration or the current administration did a lot. But I think it also, in retrospect, with the scale and the severity of what is happening in the region, the response is very correlated to what is the scale of the things that is happening right now. So I can't really say that Democrats, Republicans will do better if they get reelected, or like Democrats wouldn't do better than the Trump administration. But I think from the at least from just for the candidate Joe Biden, former Vice President Joe Biden, I think his remarks about the China is very questionable. In my personal opinion, he said a lot of very positive things about China. So I don't know his stance on this, how he will act on this regards, but I hope whoever gets elected in this following November election, I hope that person should take the responsibility of the United Nations as the largest and as a lot of people say, like, most powerful country in the world right now, or in history, to stick to the promise of never again, and to do some more concrete actions against the Chinese government, as genocide and all other colonial policies in Uyghur Autonomous Region. And I also hope the United States government can take the Uyghur issue same as Tibetan issue. And we have seen this a lot on multiple the Uyghur history, Uyghurs relation with China, Uyghurs history is very similar to that of the Tibetans. We both were first occupied by Qing Empire. Before that, we were both independent. And even during Qing Empire, it was just military control. We still had our, we were still ruled by our own people, like our own king. But then in 20th century, multiple times we got our independence back, both Tibetans and Uyghurs. And both Tibetans and Uyghurs, for example, Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region was peacefully annexed by Communist China in 1949, and Tibet was also peacefully annexed by China in 1950, just a year later. And both regions have the same autonomous status, but the response and the treatment of the Uyghur issue and the like viewpoint perspective is very different, just both from the media and the U.S. government and other governments. So I think the governments should also take this the Uyghur issue same level as Tibetan issue, and I also hope it can be rightly considered as like colonial or territorial issue or like ethnic issue, not just from the perspective of religious freedom. I mean, I haven't really seen like Tibetan issue being like discussed or seen as like religious freedom issue. I mean, religious freedom is one part of the bigger one part of the problem, but simply attributing the whole Uyghur situation as like the religious freedom issue, I think it is very misleading. But yeah, so I so hope the next elected government can, whoever gets elected, do more about the take the Uyghur issue to the same level as Tibetan issue.
Thank you so much for today's interview, Arfat. Everybody, you can follow Arfat there. I've just got his Twitter handle there. Make sure you share his videos, hear his story. Before I let you go, I do have one more question. Look, you've got your dad here. If your dad was able to hear you right now, what would you say to him?
I will say just wherever you are, however you are, I just hope you're okay, and I just hope him to treat himself well, even in the worst condition. Don't give up the hope. That's all I can say. And I'm doing very fine. He doesn't need to worry about me. And yeah, I hope he is still alive at the very least.
I hope to. Please, brothers and sisters, make dua for Alfred and his family and all of the Uyghurs currently in this modern 21st century genocide that is being committed by the Chinese regime. I want to thank you, Arfat. Thank you for your time. Please, brothers and sisters, share this video, share his story, follow him, get his story out there, and put pressure on the Chinese government regime as much as you can. Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.